This is VCD2370, utilizing the very limited design capabilities of Word. What we're talking about here is Microsoft Word. It is not a design program. It's not designed to do that. It does not really give you the flexibility that you could have with something like InDesign or even Illustrator, but it does allow you to lay things out. And if you, even in the most basic way, it can make it better than a normal paper that you're turning in. And in this class, I do expect you to think about how your paper looks when you turn it in. It can't just be a regular paper. So let's get rid of this headline here. And what I have is what amounts to, a basic, boring paper. It's just everything's laid out. There's words that look like they're spelled wrong, but they're not. They're art words. And I got to change the date here to fall 20. There's nothing wrong with this. It's fine. But I can actually make this paper look better so that it adds value to the paper. It shows that I cared enough to think about how I was actually presenting the information, not just here's the information. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at type. Then we're going to be looking at hierarchy. Then we're going to be looking at the layout. So the first thing is the typography here. Now, the type that we're looking at is defaulted to Calibri. It's a body copy. It's fine, but it's not really that great. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight it and I'm going to change my copy to something a little bit more stylized. And I've picked Baskerville. Now, the reason I've picked Baskerville is a font family or a typeface family that offers me a lot of different options and variety. So I'm just going to use Baskerville regular for now. And everything is just going to change to that. But I can mix typefaces. If you are going to mix typefaces on a paper like this, try to pick one that is serifed and one that is not serifed, one that is sans serifed. It adds a little variety, but do not add more than 2 typefaces unless you really know what you're doing. For now, all I want you to do is think about a better typeface for maybe your headlines. And because I'm working in a very specific time frame and a poster that's very modern, I'm going to pick a modern face. So I'm going to use Futura medium condensed, and I'm going to do the same for my Futura medium condensed for the headline there, and I'm going to change this one to Futura medium condensed. This is also an erroneous piece of type that I want to get rid of. So I've gotten rid of that. So I've already started to change the layout, and it looks a little bit better. I'm also going to change my type here because this is my headline. This is what I want everybody to really look at. So I'm going to change it from 24 all the way up to, from 12 all the way up to 24. Now my headline knows what I'm talking about. This is what my paper is all about. Okay? So we talked a little bit about type, and now we've gotten the hierarchy. We see the darker areas are where we're going to be looking. That's where our eye is drawn. Now I want to look at the layout. And the layout is going to be relatively simple because I'm going to use columns. And I'm going to go to more columns, and right here is where it's going to get kind of fun. Right now, the default is one column that is 6.5 inches wide. Well, I'm going to be doing the whole document here. And the first thing I really should be doing is going back and changing my margins. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to change my margins. Instead of being just an inch, I'm actually going to move my margins to a little bit wider. Move that over. Here again, I was telling you, this is not really designed for this, but we are going to make it work. There we go. Now I've widened it up so my margins are a little bit better. I've got a little bit more, I've got some more width to it. My line length is too long. So now this is where the columns come in. And I'm going to change my columns to 2 columns. But you'll notice that they're equal distance, or equal width. I'm going to change that. Instead of making them both equal, I'm actually going to make one 4 inches wide. And that will change the other one to 2.8. I could actually go a little bit, I'm going to do this a little bit different. I'm going to make this 2.5. And that one changes my spacing up a little bit. So now let's say okay and see what we get. There we go. Now it looks a little bit too wide to me, so I'm going to move this in a little bit on this side and in a little bit on this side. So it looks a little bit better, although it's kind of broken right now, but you'll see how that'll fix. I'm going to go back here to the columns for a second because I'm going to add a design motif, and that is right here. I can add a line right between the columns to show that I'm splitting it. So there we go. So now it has a little bit more design to it. Now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, now I want to get that image up in here. But before I do that, I think I'm going to change my point size on my type. If I look at this, my point size for all of my copy is 12. I'm going to change that to 10.5, which is definitely going to make it a little bit smaller, which is nice, right? I'm also going to do something else. I'm going to take my name down from the top, and I'm doing that by choice, and I'm going to put it at the end. And the reason I'm going to put it at the end is that I want anybody who's reading this to know this is the most important thing, that this is what this paper is about, and at the end, it's almost like it's a signature, okay? The last thing is I've got to get this image up here, and I could put it right there, but something's not gonna, it's gonna move things around for me. I'm not quite sure I like that. If I go back into layout over here, I'll make sure you can see this part. There it is. Right here, this sucker, I can say this is my picture format, and it's wraparound. And what that means is that this will now, I can move this anywhere. Let me do it again. Instead of wraparound, I'm going to go square. I can move this, and you can see that it moves the type with it, right? So I want to move that up nice and high so that it's about equal, but I still have a little bit of information here. Well, I can actually change this typeface because it's not as important as the rest of it. It is important, but for me, it's not as important. And I'm going to change that down to a 9-point typeface, which brings it up. And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a couple hard returns in here and get rid of some of these spaces. For example, if I hold down my shift key and my return key, now all of a sudden my break isn't quite as bad. Same thing can go here. Same thing can go there. Now everything is appearing on one page. You can see it's looking a little bit better. I'm going to change a few more little things. Come up here, make that a hard return. I actually want to have a little bit of space between there, so I can move that. And because I do have the space, I'm going to actually increase this from 12 to 18. We'll change this from 12 or 10.5 to maybe 16. And I'm going to change this to about 16. Now, as you can see, now it looks like a whole different paper. It shows that I cared, that I thought about it. It ties right in with what we're learning about layout, what we're talking about design, and how it adds value to it. This is a paper that somebody is going to want to look at and read, as opposed to something that looks like a plain old academic paper. So this is what I want you to be taking with you as you go forth and start working on your papers and start researching and start thinking about it, is that the design and the presentation of the paper is just as important as the content itself.